to government benefits might seem a little random.
Maybe a bit. But think about it, right? Where do people go when they're trying to figure out complex stuff or just connect with others in the same boat?
Online places, forums, Reddit, exactly. It's where those conversations happen.
Precisely. And that's kind of the vibe we're going for today. We're digging into the upcoming changes for VA disability and Social Security benefits for 2025.
Yeah, because navigating these systems, it can feel overwhelming, a bit like scrolling through an endless forum thread, honestly.
Totally. There's just so much information, sometimes conflicting stuff too. So our mission here is to, cut through that noise, pull out the really important updates that you need to know about.
Right, and to do that, we've looked at a whole stack of sources. We've got official info from SSA.gov, news from places like military.com and fingerlakes1.com.
Uh-huh. We also looked at the Economic Times, advocacy perspectives from the ARC, and really importantly, we dove into a thread on our veterans' benefits.
Yeah, to get that real-world feel for what people are actually talking about and maybe struggling with. Okay, so let's get into it. Starting with VA disability payments for 2025. What's the headline there?
Okay, so the big news for VA disability beneficiaries is the COLA, the cost of living adjustment. For 2025, it's set at 2.5%.
2.5%. Okay, so that means a bump in the monthly payments.
Exactly. It's designed to help those benefits keep up with inflation, so the value doesn't get eaten away.
Makes sense. Now, the payment schedule itself, that can be a bit tricky, right?
It can seem that way. Generally, the rule is you get paid for month A on the first business day of month B. So your May benefits arrive on the first business day of June, usually.
Usually. But there's a catch.
Yeah, there is. If that first business day happens to be a weekend or maybe a federal holiday,
Right.
then the payment actually shifts. It gets paid out on the last business day of the preceding month.
Okay, so sometimes you get paid early.
Yeah.
Essentially, in the month before the benefit month.
Precisely. And military.com laid out the specific 2025 dates. Like January 2025's payment actually arrived back on Friday, January 31st.
Okay, but then March's payment was April 1st, a Tuesday.
Right. And February's was Friday, February 28th. So it bounces around a bit based on the calendar.
And it's important to remember, this isn't just one type of payment. The VA covers several different things.
Absolutely. There's the main VA disability compensation, which is tax-free based on your rating. Can be like $165 up to over $3,600 a month.
Wow. Okay.
Then you've got DIC, dependency, and indemnity compensation for surviving family members, also tax-free. There are pensions for low-income vets and survivors, special monthly compensation, SMC for more severe disabilities, loss of limbs, things like that.
Okay.
And aid in attendance or housebound benefits, which help with care costs, like in-home or nursing home care.
Gotcha. Now, connecting this back to that Reddit thread,
Yeah.
Barcu's benefits, what are people actually saying about these payments? It sounds like the timing is a big topic.
Oh, it absolutely is. Huge topic. People are always asking about getting paid before the official date.
Right, the early pay thing.
Exactly. And what the thread really clarifies is, well, the VA sends the money out on schedule, but when it actually lands in your account, that depends entirely on your bank or credit union.
So Navy Federal might release it a day or two early.
Right. That's a common one people mention. Navy Fed, USAA sometimes. But then someone banking with, say, Chase might see it exactly on the official date, not a day sooner.
And we saw comments about Cash App maybe being super quick and Vero sticking to the schedule too.
Yeah, it's all over the map, depending on the institution. And you can see why that causes, some confusion and maybe a bit of frustration.
For sure. If your buddy gets paid Tuesday and you're waiting until Thursday.
Exactly. But a really good point made in the thread was, look, even if it's a day or two early, it's still just once a month. It doesn't change the amount or the overall monthly cycle.
Right. It just shifts the specific day slightly.
Yeah. One person called it just a slightly different renewal date each month, which I thought was a good way to put it.
That makes sense. And there was even a bit of a debate there, wasn't there? About whether knowing the early dates even matters that much.
There was. Some folks find it really helpful for budgeting, especially if things are tight. Knowing if it'll hit Tuesday or Thursday can make a difference for planning bills.
Okay.
But others were like, look, you should be budgeting month to month anyway. The exact day doesn't change the bigger picture.
Which is also a fair point. Good financial habits are key regardless.
Definitely. Lots of comments emphasizing budgeting.
Did any other related questions pop up in that Reddit thread?
Yeah, a couple of things. There was some confusion mentioned about the difference between SSI and SSA, which we'll get into more in a sec.
Okay.
And someone asked if GI Bill housing allowance, the MHA payments, follow the same schedule.
Oh, interesting question. Do they?
Well, the sources we looked at didn't specifically compare the MHA schedule to disability, but the general principle, VA sends funds, bank releases them, likely still applies. Best bet is always to check directly with the VA Ed Service and your bank for those specifics.
Good advice. Any other bank chatter? USAA, Navy Fed.
Yeah, confirmations that those often pay a day or two early, like we said. And there was talk about a NextCards chart.
NextCards chart. What's that?
Sounds like maybe a specific payment calendar someone made, maybe for users of that card, or just a general guide someone shared.
One of those unofficial schedules.
Exactly. And people rightly pointed out, take those with a grain of salt. Your mileage may vary depending on your actual bank.
So the key takeaway is understanding of the VA's official send date isn't always the day you see the money. Check with your bank.
That's the bottom line. The Reddit thread is great for seeing you're not alone in wondering about this stuff, but your bank holds the final answer on timing. Okay, should we pivot to Social Security?
Let's do it. So, similar story with the COA, right? A 2.5% increase for Social Security and SSI.
Correct. 2.5% COLA for both, according to SSA.gov. For regular Social Security retirement or disability, that kicks in with the January 2025 payments.
Okay.
But for SSI, supplemental security income, recipients actually saw that increase a tiny bit earlier. Their first increased payment was December 31st, 2024.
Okay. Because FSI pays for the upcoming month, right?
Exactly. December 31st payment was for January.
Gotcha. Any other related money changes? Taxes, earnings limits?
Yep. The maximum earnings subject to Social Security tax goes up. For 2025, it'll be $176,100.
Okay.
And the earnings limits for people working while receiving benefits before their full retirement age or in the year they reach full retirement age, those limits are also increasing. Means you can earn a bit more before benefits might be reduced.
Right. Now, you mentioned a quirk with SSI payments in May 2025. FingerLakes1.com flagged this.
Yeah, this is an important one for SSI folks to know. In May 2025, they're actually scheduled to get 2 SSI payments.
So does that work?
Well, the first one arrives on May 1st, as usual for May's benefit, but June 1st, 2025, falls on a Sunday.
So the weekend holiday rule kicks in again.
Exactly. Since June 1st isn't a business day, the June SSI payment gets pushed forward to the last business day of May, which is Friday, May 30th.
So May 1st and May 30th, 2 payments in 1 month.
Right. But here's the crucial part. Because the June payment comes early at the end of May.
There's no SSI payment in June itself.
Bingo. 0 payment in June. So that second payment on May 30th has to last all the way until the July 1st payment.
Wow. Okay. Budgeting is going to be absolutely critical for SSI recipients around that time.
Extremely critical. And just for reference, those standard SSI amounts after the SILA will be $967 for an individual, $1,450 for a couple.
Good to know. What about regular Social Security retirement and disability payments in May? Are those on a weird schedule too?
No, those follow the standard birth date schedule. Finger Lakes One and SSA confirm this. It's based on the day of the month you were born.
Okay, refresh my memory on that.
Sure. If your birthday is between the 1st and the 10th, your May payment is Wednesday, May 14th.
Okay.
Birthdays 11th to 20th get paid the following Wednesday, May 21st.
Gotcha.
And birthdays 21st to the 31st get paid the Wednesday after that, May 28th.
Right. And what about people who started getting benefits way back?
Yeah.
Before May 97.
Yes, good point. They're usually paid on the 3rd of the month, but since May 3rd is a Saturday. Actually, wait, let me double check that. SSA schedule says people on benefits before May 1997 get paid on May 1st in this case.
Okay, May 1st for the older beneficiaries.
Yeah.
But for everyone else on the birth date schedule.
Yeah.
There's a gap, right?
Yeah, if you're born after the 10th, your first payment isn't until May 14th or later. So there's a stretch, like May 5th to May 12th, with no regular Social Security checks going out for those groups. Something to plan for.
Definitely. Now, another thing Finger Lakes One reported, potential payment suspensions. That sounds serious.
It is, and it seems the SSA is tightening up on compliance. Starting around May, they can suspend payments for several reasons. Failing to report going back to work, especially if you're on SSDI, disability insurance, earning over the allowed income limits.
Okay.
For SSI recipients, spending more than 30 days straight outside the U.S. can trigger it.
Right.
Also, not reporting big life events, getting married, divorced, maybe receiving an inheritance, and obviously if the beneficiary passes away, payments start.
And the key message from the SSA is These aren't mistakes.
Right. They're stressing that these suspensions are due to non-compliance, not reporting things you're supposed to report.
Yeah.
So keeping the SSA updated is absolutely vital.
Makes sense. It's probably good to quickly recap who even qualifies for Social Security, generally.
The basic rules are you typically need 40 work credits, which is about 10 years of work where you paid Social Security taxes.
Okay. Legal work.
Legal work, paying taxes, yes. You need a valid Social Security number. You need to be at least 62 for retirement benefits. And if you're an immigrant, you need legal status.
So if someone worked mostly cash jobs, or didn't have papers, or worked overseas without paying into the system, they might not qualify for retirement.
Correct. Even if they reach retirement age, they might not have the work credits. That's where SSI comes in sometimes, as that safety net for low-income seniors or disabled folks without the work history. But SSI has its own strict income and asset limits.
Gotcha. Okay, shifting gears slightly, there's a new rule about identity verification, starting mid-April 2025.
Yes, this is a significant change reported by the Economic Times and also the ARC. For new applicants for retirement, survivors, or auxiliary benefits, if you can't verify your identity online through their portal, you now have to go into an SSA office in person to do it.
In person only. What about people applying for disability or Medicare?
That's the interesting part. For SSDI, Medicare, and SSI applicants, it seems they might still have the option to verify by phone if online doesn't work. But for the retirement survivors group, if online fails, it's got to be in person.
I can see how that could be tough for some people. Seniors, people in rural areas, maybe?
Exactly. Concerns were definitely raised about transportation issues, potentially longer waits if SSA offices are short-staffed, just general access hurdles.
So the advice is?
Try the online verification first through the My Social Security portal. If you know you'll need to go in person, probably best to schedule an appointment well in advance.
Okay. Now, the ARC, the advocacy group you mentioned, they seem to have broader concerns about the SSA right now.
They really do. They paint a picture of, frankly, a growing crisis at the agency. They're talking about huge backlogs in disability claims, really long wait times just to get an initial decision.
How long are we talking?
They cited stats suggesting hundreds of thousands of pending claims and average waits stretching many, many months. It points to the system being under serious strain.
And is it just the workload? Or other factors?
Well, the ARC also flagged planned staffing cuts like 7,000 employees and closures of regional offices. Plus, they mentioned the closure of the SSA's own Office of Civil Rights and Equal Opportunity.
Wow. Cutting staff and closing offices while facing backlogs seems counterintuitive.
Yeah. It certainly raises concerns about service quality and access, doesn't it? Even if benefit amounts aren't cut directly, making it harder to get the benefits or resolve issues has a similar impact.
Yeah, absolutely. Did the ARC mention other policy changes causing concern?
Yes, they highlighted a new policy for collecting overpayments. If the SSA paid someone too much SSDI by mistake, they can now withhold up to 50% of future checks to get it back.
50%? That's a huge chunk.
It is. For SSI overpayments, the withholding rate is lower, capped at 10%, but still, that 50% for SSDI is significant.
And they also reiterated the concerns about the in-person ID verification we just discussed.
Right, and they even mentioned issues impacting disability hearings, the appeal stage. Things like hearing room closures, problems paying interpreters, which could just add more delays for people trying to fight a denial.
So the ARC's main point seems to be that while Congress might not be cutting benefit dollars, these operational issues and policy changes are effectively reducing access and support for people who rely on the system.
That's a fair summary of their perspective, yes.
One more legislative thing, the Social Security Fairness Act. What was that about?
Yes. Briefly, according to SSA.gov, this act got rid of two provisions called WEP and GPO, the windfall elimination provision and the government pension offset.
Okay. What did they do?
They basically reduced Social Security benefits for people who also got pensions from jobs, usually government jobs, where they didn't pay Social Security taxes. Think teachers, police in some areas. Repealing WEP and GPO is a big deal for those folks.
And retroactive payments started.
Yes, retroactive payments related to that started back in March 2025.
Okay, lots to unpack there on the Social Security side. So for you listening, the key things to track are that 2.5% COLA, but especially that May payment schedule.
Definitely. The double SSI payment in May, no payment in June are crucial for budgeting, and the regular Social Security dates based on your birthday.
Plus, the increased focus on compliance report those changes, and the new in-person ID verification for some applicants.
Right. And just be aware of the potential for delays or service issues given the challenges the ARC highlighted at the SSA. It might take more persistence to navigate the system right now.
So wrapping up the main takeaways. VA benefits. See a 2.5% COLA. Payment timing depends heavily on your bank. Check those Reddit threads for shared experiences, but trust your bank statement.
And for Social Security, 2.5% COLA, watch out for the May-June SSI payment schedule change. Know your birthday payment week. Report life changes promptly. Be ready for potential in-person ID checks if applying for retirement survivor benefits. And understand WEPI GPO repeal if that affects you. Staying informed is really key.
Absolutely. And look, we know this is complex. This deep dive is really just hitting the highlights, giving you a starting point.
Please do check out the links to the actual sources we talked about, military.com, SSA.gov, the ARC, all of them for the full details.
And don't hesitate to use the My Social Security portal online, or just call the SSA or VA directly if you have questions about your specific situation. They're the definitive sources for your case.
Which brings us to maybe a final thought to leave you with. Considering everything we've discussed, the move towards digital services, but also the staffing and access challenges being reported, particularly at the SSA, what does the future really look like for accessibility and support for the millions who depend on these essential safety nets?
Yeah. Something to think about. Welcome to TBH Reddit YouTube channel. Now, I know jumping from Reddit to government benefits might seem a little random.
Maybe a bit, but think about it, right? Where do people go when they're trying to figure out complex stuff or just connect with others in the same boat?
Online places, forums, Reddit, exactly. It's where those conversations happen.
Precisely.